Ellen had gave me a call, asked me to be a speaker here, and of course I said yes right away. These workshops, these series, they're extremely important on getting various industries together, government partners like NMDOT to really understand what's going out in the industry, what we're doing to address safety and infrastructure, and just learning from each other. There's tremendous value in these workshops. And like I said, when Ellen called me, yes, right away. The only thing she did say, she said, we're looking for a keynote speaker. I saw the program this morning and I'm like, good, it doesn't say keynote speaker, because by no means I'm not a keynote speaker. Going to engineering school, they never told you you're going to be up in a room like this speaking. I thought I'd be in a cubicle somewhere where I started my career doing plans and kind of have my goldfish on the side and doing plans, but they really never tell you that you're going to be public speaking like this. So in this position, I'm having to do this a lot, so I'm learning to come up and speak. So I appreciate the invite and kind of this presentation kind of telling you what NMDOT is doing, how we're trying to improve this area, kind of the goals I have as the new district engineer, and going and of course getting your input. And hopefully at the end, if you have some questions, I'll be able to answer, and we'll go from there. New Mexico is divided into 6 districts. District 2 is the largest in the state. We maintain 7,750 lane miles, by far the most in any of the districts. As you can see, a lot of counties, we got a lot of employees, a lot of diversification across the state in these areas. One thing that really stands out, the reason I took this job, as you can see, is 137 communities served. And that's a big key for me. We're here to serve the communities. We're here to serve the oil gas industry, all the economic drivers in Southeast New Mexico. That's what we do. That's what I'm most proud of and honored when they asked me to take this position. Next slide. I don't need to tell you this. This is a slide that I take around the state when I talk to our legislative partners, our executive manager. We know who we are down here. The oil and gas industry, the extractions, we are tied traditionally to ranching. They drive the economy here in Southeast New Mexico, but not only in Southeast New Mexico, but the state. And so, one of the comments I get a lot now that I public speak and I present projects here in Southeast New Mexico, especially with projects that are coming to the community, that they may have questions on what choices we're making on our designs for our highway. The one comment I've gotten in every public meeting is, you from Santa Fe don't know anything about Southeast New Mexico. But that's not the case. Like Michael introduced, I'm born and raised here. I understand this area. I have family that works in the industry. We've been here a long time as a family. I understand what's going on, and it helps me really come into rooms like this and understand where you're coming from, and trying to take what you're dealing with out there back to our teams at the district office and making some changes, some significant changes to help all of us. We all work here. We all want to go home at night. We want our families to go home at night. So I'm proud to be from this area. Next slide. So, of course, when I took this position, the cabinet secretary, of course, had a lot of internal goals for me to improve at the district office. But to the bigger pictures, bigger picture goals or matrix that our secretary wanted me to really take on is pavement condition in District 2. That was number 1. And so as NMDOT has progressed these last few years, we've really gone to trying to get into data-driven decisions, how we select projects, where we spend the money. And so this is a pavement condition rating. We survey all roads, every year to see the conditions we're at. So it's kind of a rating scale. Of course, 100 would be a brand new road, goes 0 to 100. And so this is kind of our scale. It's based on cracking, rutting, the smoothness out there. So we really have a handle on where our roads are at, and we're really using this to really dictate where a lot of our money's going. So next slide. So this is kind of where we're at in District 2. As you can see, I'll just use the U.S. routes because I know we have a 25-minute presentation here. And so, in 2019, roads on District 2, 40% were good, 50 were fair, and 10% were poor. And so that's where we're at in 2019. Next slide. As you can see, we're going down. It's not a secret. As you can see, that bottom slide down there, probably many of you have driven that. That's New Mexico 176, really bad condition of pavement. And so we are having an active construction project there. And so overall, as the district engineer, I'm tasked with raising those percentages. So as a state, we really are looking to get our good up to 40% and our poor under 5%. But that's a big task because that's going to take money. So next slide. Second goal, the secretary came to me to reduce and help, be a partner or a part of the solution here in Southeast New Mexico is fatalities. As you can see, the trend is going up. Alcohol. We have a lot of campaigns at the state level to try to reduce the distracted drivers, but as you can see, we've got a decent handle. We've seen alcohol accidents go down, but the trend is the rest of the accident going up. We're seeing more fatalities. Next slide. This is a stat that New Mexico should not be proud of. This is something we're dealing with. We don't see as much in Southeast New Mexico, but as you can see, 103 pedestrians have been, killed in our state highway system. This is just our state highway system. This is not the local roads. New Mexico is #1 in the country for pedestrian per capita. So it's something not to be proud of. A lot of these are, of course, happening in the bigger cities, Albuquerque, Santa Fe, but we are together in the state, so we need to figure this one out because this is, as you can see, a significant jump in the last 5 years. Next slide. So going back to improving our pavement, so like I said, we've transitioned to a data-driven agency. So this is a slide. It's kind of needs to be updated, but as you can see, pavement doesn't deteriorate in a linear curve. It looks like this, and so the longer we wait to get to a road to improve it, the more it's going to cost us. And so what we're trying to do is try to invest our money on that first half of the curve. That gives us a better value for our money. It just makes it smarter what we're trying to do. As you can see at the bottom, that figure's way outdated for 2 miles. You're almost looking at double that. So if we're waiting till these roads are falling apart like 176, we're putting a lot of money into it. So next slide. So just an example, this is from the Rhode Island DOT. They've kind of taken this asset management approach. So what we're trying to do is spend money early on our roads that are good and fair. This allows us to enhance the overall system and in the long term save us a lot of money. So if we're putting money on roads that are good and fair instead of these ones that are really poor, over the long life of a highway, a corridor, as this was a study done by Rhode Island DOT, over a 40-year lifespan of this highway, they saved over 160 million. So that 160 million could go to a route that needs it, that needs safety improvements. So it's very important with what New Mexico DOT is doing and adopting this strategy. Next slide. So just examples, some of the pavement projects we've taken on in this area over the last 5 years. This is the southeast portion, 176, 18, 128. We have invested, over 65 million. We're adopted a strategy throughout the district, and I'll give an example, not to this area, but US 54 between El Paso and Alamogordo. We're investing. This is a really good, decent road, good shape. We're putting money into it, and I'm getting the calls that are like, "Why are you putting money in this road when, the X road over here is falling apart?" But we're trying to explain the strategy a little better. So that road is in good, fair condition. I'm investing 15 million now to preserve it, but in the long run, DOT is going to save 40 to 50 million dollars on that road. So in the future, we can take that 40 million and bring it back to this corner of the state, or bring it up to the Clovis area, or wherever it's needed. So that's our strategy on our pavement. So next slide. So as a new district engineer, like I touched upon, as a state, we have various safety campaigns. Work well with law enforcement to try to reduce our accidents and fatalities. But I'm in a great position as a district engineer to really address the heart of a lot of these situations. We need major infrastructure improvement. You know, our roads, especially with increase in freight, commercial vehicles, just the congestion, you know, our roads are under capacity. We're still, this area, you know, for the longest time, we're just 2-lane highways. 128 is classified as a major collector. And I know most people don't know what that means, the way we classify roads, but that means that road really doesn't have that much traffic. And it's not, 128 is not a major collector. I mean, it operates like one of our US routes. And so the best way I see in reducing fatalities and improving safety is really to take on these major infrastructure projects. So this is the one we're doing right now. The whole 285 corridor is under construction. We invested $150 million. Next slide. As you see, these improvements, you know, the first part will be a Super 2, like John talked about. We're also improving all the major turnouts. We've identified that as a problem. And the portion from Loving to Malaga, that's going to be a 4-lane. So, you know, by increasing capacity in these roads, bringing in what they really need to address the traffic that's out there, we really feel this is going to reduce those accidents to a minimal. At one time, this was, US 82 was the most dangerous road in District 2. Next was US 285. And so we've kind of been prioritizing. And so now our next road is 128. So next slide. So we did just complete, like I talked about, at one time US 82 between Artesia and Lovington, or we've gone to the 529 cutout, was the most dangerous road in District 2, had the most fatalities. And so we just recently completed that. At one time, that was a 2-lane narrow road, no shoulders. As you can see from that picture, now it's a 4-lane and a lot of sections. There's a lot of 2-lane enhanced, 3-lane. But I like this picture because it reminds me of 20 years ago, DOT took on the corridor between Roswell and Ruidoso. And so at one time, that was a 2-lane, and that was the most dangerous highway in the state of Mexico. And, you know, we took it on in 2002 and expanded to 4-lane. Since 2002, there's only been 2 fatalities on US 70 between Roswell and Ruidoso. And that shows you what major infrastructure improvement can do, how much that can reduce what's going on these highways. You know, and the 2 fatalities that happened in US 70 were alcohol related, so it wasn't really tied to the conditions out there. So that's where I'm really pushing these larger infrastructure projects. Next slide. Of course, like I said, New Mexico, we're not a large state, and funding is always going to be an issue. And so we have to prioritize projects. So like I said, we've taken on US 82, we're on 285, and our next priority, which, you know, a lot of these people in this room are familiar, 128. That's our #1 priority for District 2. We're doing it in a design build project process. It's a procurement process, kind of try to speed it up. I won't really go into the details and bore you, but that's what we're trying to do. Next slide. So, of course, the reason we're doing 128, you know, just safety, you know, the congestion, the conditions out there, the maintenance that needs it. Next slide. So, as you can see, 128 from 2014 to 2019, the number that sticks out, 27 fatal crashes. That's a lot. That is a lot for a highway of that magnitude, that distance, that traffic, and it's increasing every day. We did make it a safety corridor, and we've had some success, but that highway needs to be expanded to like 82 and like US 285. So, next slide. So for us to reconstruct and do everything for New Mexico 31 and 128, we're looking at $433 million. And for New Mexico, that's a lot of money. And so, next slide. What we're doing in District 2, just like we have to do with a lot of our projects, we have to prioritize. And so the design build projects we're working on right now, the packet we're putting together to get to our contractors and designers to build is this packet right here. Um, Overall, this is about $180 million. And so right now, that first part is funded in red. That'll be priority. And then within our contract, each of those other colors are alternates that if funding becomes available, we can take on. And so that's how we're going out to try to address this corridor, prioritize it, and then hopefully when we get these sections built, we can go on to the next sections and try to get to that rest of that $433 million. The jail section, of course, is critical. Priority one would be that red section, and then jail would be the next one if we got funding on this next coming year. We have put in for a grant, and so hopefully we'll get that for jail. We can get that part of this if we do not get other funding from our state partners. Next slide. It's kind of our schedule. So we're anticipating going out, like you said, the final step before we go to construction was execute that design build agreement. So we're looking at March 2023. The schedule's kind of getting pushed. That's probably not till summer 23, and then you'll probably more likely see construction late 23, early 24. Next slide. So, there's a lot of talk about the bipartisan infrastructure law bill that was recently passed. I get a lot of people coming up to me and saying, wow, you're getting all these billions, you should be taking on, 128 next week. Yes, it's nice. It's nice to get additional funding. We need it. But as you can see, this is next 5 years, New Mexico is going to receive $3.7 million. The last 5 years, we received $2.5 million from these federal bills. So it is an increase, but a lot of that money is dedicated to a lot of those categories up there. So, we are investing in broadband, some of these other ones, not necessarily in the infrastructure projects that DOT is doing. Next slide. So this is just kind of our budget, DOT-wise. Half our budget comes from state sources and their half for federal. So we're kind of a 50-50 split. But as you can see, this takes into account that bipartisan infrastructure bill. And as you can see on the federal funds, it only goes up $100 million over those next 10 years. And so when you divide this by 6 districts, you're looking at about $50 million a district for infrastructure improvements. That doesn't go a long way. As you can see, $400 million for 128. Even the prioritized version is 180. $50 million, it takes a long time to build this. I don't know what John's budget was, but if he woke up with this budget, he would probably spit out his coffee. And so, but we're just the nature of New Mexico. We have smaller budgets, and we really need to prioritize. Next slide. So the only way New Mexico is going to be able to take on these large infrastructure projects like 128, the previous one, 150, it has to come through our state partners, through our legislative. As you can see, they have seen the value in infrastructure, and they're starting to invest. That first, from 2008, 2018, as you can see, we only received $100 million in those 10 years from the legislature for infrastructure projects. But as you see, every year they've seen the value and have been giving us money. US 35, with our regular program, that $50 million that I receive at the district, we would still be trying to get to construction. But that 2019, out of that $325 million, $100 million went to US 285. So as you can see, we received about $235 million in 2022. Some of that will go to 128. So I'm not supposed to really lobby, but as John said, write a few letters. And so, because really, it's not going to happen unless the state continues to put investment money from the state funds that are coming in. Next slide. So as you can see, we are bringing money to New Mexico for these projects, and of course, you're going to see a lot of active projects in this area. As you can see from this statistics, when it's construction season, 1/5 of the roads, at least the major roads, are going to be under construction. Every 100 miles, you're going to see barrels and cones. So be aware. This is a stat that, saddens me every time I read it. 3 people lose their lives every day in our highway construction zones. 40,000 people injured. So it's a problem, just like all of us are dealing with different issues within our work. We're dealing the same with ours. Our work zones are become very dangerous. I hadn't been on a work zone in years. I'm doing this, been in the office, and I went out on a construction site with some of the guys, and it's scary. Standing there next to that barrel and cars flying 60, 70 miles, they're not slowing down. And so I really feel every day for the guys that are out there working and making our highways better. Next slide. So just kind of a glance of what's going on in our work zones. It's rising every year. As you can see, 857 people were killed in work zones. The majority of those are passengers, people wrecking in these work zones. High percentage is commercial vehicles. So this kind of giving you a glance on kind of what our industry is dealing with. Next slide. This kind of the number one accident is cars are running in, rear-ending into either the cars that are waiting there in the work zones and the barriers. That's right here is one of our bread and butter type plans. The other one, as you've probably seen out there and everybody hates, is when we have to pilot car, one side at a time. That has become the most dangerous one for us in this area. Just recently on New Mexico 176, two gentlemen lost their lives where they hit the tail end of the people waiting. And so that's the biggest problem for us right now, especially in this area. The peak traffic, different hours, it varies. And sometimes these queues are extremely long, sometimes short, sometimes they outpace our signs. And so we're having to really think about how we're going to set up these work zones, because we're getting more and more vehicles crashing into that back of those vehicles waiting to go through that work zone. Next slide. Just some tips, that's just some tips, pay attention to the signs, slow down. The majority of these accidents are happening on our higher speed highways, the ones that are 65, 55, 75. People are distracted. And so just be aware. There's a lot of construction going on in this area, and just some helpful tips. Next slide. Other DOTs are getting very creative, relying on technology to really help out what's going on in these work zones, using detection systems, putting them out further, really anticipating how far those lines are going. Our typical work zone used to be a mile with signage. We found out that's not even nearly enough in this area. We've gone to 2 miles. Sometimes that's not enough, and some of those crashes, they've occurred 3-4 miles from the work zone where they're backing up so far. So New Mexico DOT really needs to start looking at some of these advanced systems, but we're not there yet. We're far from taking on these intelligent kind of traffic systems. So what we're doing at our level is really reaching out to you as the industry stakeholders, especially like on our Design Bill 128. We're really having a lot of stakeholders getting input for you. One of the biggest part of our contract is going to be maintenance of traffic, and that's going to be constant communication with the industry, so we don't have these rear-end crashes that are coming into our work zones. So next slide. So December 6, 2021, me being a new district engineer, you have so much to think about. 332 employees work under me, and on this date, I get a call at 10 a.m. A commercial vehicle went into our work zone. The four employees, DOT employees, are being rushed to the hospital, and so your heart sinks. You got that gut feeling, hoping they're okay. Unfortunately, one of our employees was airlifted to Lubbock and didn't make it that day. And so as a district engineer, you sit there and, you feel you're responsible for these people. I feel like I'm responsible day in, day to give them the equipment they need, give them the training they need to try to avoid this situation. So this memorial was put together by our maintenance crew. The person that passed away was from a maintenance crew that was working out on US 285, and this is the memorial that the crew built for her and has it out on 285. So I know many of you have probably dealt with this situation, and we need to do everything in this room to avoid this and have our employees come home safe at night. So hopefully we keep having these workshops, keep working together, and ultimately getting this goal of reducing what's going out there. I appreciate your time. Any questions? Go ahead.
A little bit ways back, you showed a graph that I wasn't able to fully absorb, but it was a graph that showed two trends. One of them was fatalities a year spread out over a few years. And then there was another graph there that showed alcohol as an influence.
Right.
So it showed almost, I believe I saw 400 fatalities in a year, and then it dramatically dropped, close down to 300. So we're talking about a 25%
Right.
drop, which is wonderful. It held there for a few years, and now we're trending dramatically back up close to 400.
Right.
25% is a pretty significant number. Do we know what contributed to that drop in trend and how it held? And then what are we doing different now, or what's changed? Or what are we not doing now that is allowing that trend to go back up dramatically quickly?
You know, as a DOT, we collect all crash reports from all law enforcement. Like you said, you know, that's the data that we're looking at. We collect it all, we analyze it. You know, the drops kind of it's hard to identify what's going on. You know, we identified a lot to the safety campaigns, you know, the improved infrastructure. But of course, this uptick, as Jamie spoke of, you know, it has a lot to do with inattention, speeding, but a lot of that's not being shown in our data. And so we really can't explain that. If we look at our crash data and the way the reports are coming in and the way we're putting together and reviewing and evaluating, we really can't tell why the trend is. We know what the trend is, but if we're just going off the data, we really don't know. And so that's kind of what's going on right now. So we really need to get a better handle on how we collect data and how we evaluate it.
Any other questions? I thought I saw a hand. Go ahead, Tina. I'll make my way over there to you in just a second.
I don't really have a question. I just want to say thank you to you. I talked to you back last year with ConocoPhillips at the end of last year when you had a meeting here about intersection 285 and 31. And I'm so happy now to hear that there's progress being made in our office that's there on London Road. And we're seeing that progress now. And we're seeing the repavement. We're excited to, I heard about the interim committees that are being created through the transportation to look at transportation and infrastructure here in New Mexico. We're monitoring those committees and just want you to know we are advocates for you. And if you need us, please reach out.
I appreciate it. Really appreciate that.
Outstanding. Anyone else? The guru of District 2, ladies and gentlemen, Francisco Sanchez. I told you
Appreciate it. Thank you.
that you would enjoy it.